From place to place they carry a heavy load. Some are born again, some are burdened down with sin. So pray for all the truckers on the road. Out there on the road you have a friend. No matter what you've done or where you've been, Jesus cares for you and he will see you through. He's traveling now with you out on that road. Oh, pray for all the truckers on the road. From place to place they carry a heavy load. Some are born again, some are burdened down with sin. So pray for all the truckers on the road. Some are born again, some are burdened down with sin. So pray for all the truckers on the road. Pray for all the truckers on the road. Pray for all the truckers on the road. I need you again today. Jesus came to die on dark Calvary to save lost sinners like you and me. When I stop to think what he's done for me, how can I not give him my all? But I don't tell it enough, I don't pray enough, I don't love my neighbor as I should enough. If I try to make it by myself, I say, Lord, I need you again today. There is always something that I can do to witness for the Lord and that heavenly view. He has promised to guide me all the journey through. How can I not serve the Lord? But I don't tell it enough, I don't pray enough, I don't love my neighbor as I should enough. If I try to make it by myself, I say, Lord, I need you again today. I need thee, oh, I need thee. Every hour I need thee. Oh, bless me now, my Savior, I come to thee. But I don't tell it I should enough. If I try to make it by myself, I say, Lord, I need you again today. Lord, I need you again today.
Things work together on my way to make me more like Jesus every day. Trials come and go, He's holding
Well, good evening. Let's all stand together, take the songbook, turn to page 229. We'll sing that first verse and chorus of Wonderful Peace. Sing it out on that first. Here we go. Far away in the depths of my spirit tonight rolls a melody sweeter than song. In celestial-like strands it unceasingly falls o'er my soul like an infinite calm. Peace, peace, wonderful peace, coming down from the Father above. Sweep over my spirit forever, I pray. In fathomless billows of love. Well, thank you. It's great to see you here at First Baptist Church tonight. In just a moment, we'll take our offering. But first of all, let me read through the classes. You should have received this handout in your prayer bulletin. If you did not get one, make sure before you go to class you find one. Give you the classes real quick. We have Marriage by Divine Design, Brother Aaron Bays, room 207. Thinking Patterns That Last by Pastor Scott Cowling, room 209. Staying Faithful Throughout the Years, Brother Lee Edwards is teaching in room 210. That's going to be a great class. I'm Trying to Ruin My Kids. I'll be teaching that in room 201. Biblical Financial Principles, Dr. Ed Martin, room 200. And Making Beautiful Cupcakes, Miss Samantha and Debbie Evans, room 203. And Your Future Depends on It with Brother Ash here in the auditorium. And so I'll read those again after the offering, but we're looking forward to a great night again. I've enjoyed the sessions that I've got to go to, and just seems that I've heard good feedback from people as well. So it's been a great, I think, family emphasis, and we'll end on a good note tonight. So we're so glad you're here. We'll come and ask the Lord's blessing on the offering, and then after the offering, I'll come back before we dismiss for our classes tonight.
This is 2-in-1 prayer since I have also opening prayer. So, dear Lord, thank you for this time that you've given us. Thank you for being with us and guiding us tonight. I pray that you be with each speaker as they speak, Lord, as you open up their hearts and help them to share what you have on their hearts for us, Lord. And help us to listen and maybe learn from what they have and get some insight in what you'd have us to do, Lord. I pray that you be with the giver. In Jesus' name, amen.
Great. Thank you so much. And so make sure you grab a prayer bulletin tonight to look over those prayer requests for this week. Of course, be in prayer for First Responders Day this Sunday. Invite those folks maybe on the way home. If you get pulled over for speeding or something like that, have a First Responders invitation in there, and so pay your fine, but then invite them Sunday morning. Looking forward to a great Sunday this Sunday. Of course, have a meal for those men and women who are first responders who come to the service as well. Other requests to look in there, make sure you pray over them as well. Patch the Pirate play will be next Friday night, 7 o'clock p.m. Tickets are $5. The kids are working hard. It's going to be a great play. And they were singing today and acting, and the singing is great right now. So I'm looking forward to this play. Once again, these classes before we dismiss, and all of the 200 rooms, in case you don't know, are in our elementary building, which if you go down the hallway and head away from the gymnasium, that other building is our elementary building. Those are the 200 rooms. First one we'll have in 207, Marriage by Divine Design, by Brother Aaron Bays, or I think actually Miss Heather Bays wrote that lesson for him, so that'll be great. Thinking Patterns That Last, Pastor Scott Cowling, room 209, Staying Faithful Throughout the Years, and Brother Edwards in room 210. I'm Trying to Ruin My Kids in room 201. Biblical Financial Principles, Dr. Martin in room 200, and I think he's giving $1,000 to everyone who comes. I just said I think that. I don't know that. I think that. Making Beautiful Cupcakes by Miss Samantha and Mrs. Debbie Evans, rooms 203. And in this auditorium, Your Future Depends on It, by Brother Andy Ash, and then teens are in the teen room. All right, and teachers, we can be out about, 8, 10 or so. And then Pastor Dylan, are you having choir practice tonight? Are you still in this room, Pastor Dylan? Or have you left? You are what? No, sir. You're back. There you are. Gotcha. Okay, hiding. All right, I think he was crawling under the pews all the way to the front. So, then no choir practice and no orchestra. All right, we're to dismiss those classes, and have a great night. God bless you.
Well, good evening. Glad you guys are all here. My lovely assistant is passing out outlines if you wish to have one. That one right there is my other lovely assistant. If you can, turn your Bibles to Romans chapter 13. Romans 13. Romans 13. Brother Goldsworthy and I were talking, and he asked me what my lesson was on in here, and he says, I'm debating on whether I want to get up out of my nice, comfortable seat and go somewhere else, or just stay here in the nice, comfortable seat. So I think he left, so he must know my teaching. So, but I think that's what I do sometimes. I sit in the pews, and I'm like, oh, this is great. Nice, comfortable seat. I'll just relax right here. Romans chapter 13. We're going to start in verse number 1 and read down to verse number 7. I titled this, Your Future Depends on It, but it's about supporting leadership. A vital thing in our churches these days. We kind of shy away from that. We are in the Burger King mentality, your way, right away, and that's how we approach church a lot of times. A lot of times we come to church and we have leadership ahead of us, and we don't always agree with them. We don't always want to go the same way that they go. And I think that's the same thing that we see all throughout the Bible. We see a lot of times leadership goes in one direction, and the people sometimes murmur. If you see it in the Old Testament. Verse number 1, it says, Let every soul be subject unto the higher powers, for there is no power but of God. The powers that are ordained of God. Whosoever therefore resisteth the power, resisteth the ordinance of God. And they that resist shall receive to themselves damnation. For rulers are not a terror to good works, but to the evil. Wilt thou then not be afraid of the power? Do that which is good, and thou shalt have praise of the same. For he is the minister of God to thee for good. But if thou do that which is evil, be afraid. For he beareth not the sword in vain. For he is the minister of God, a revenger to execute wrath upon him that doeth evil. Wherefore, we must needs be subject not only for wrath, but also for conscience sake. For this cause pay ye tribute also. For they are God's ministers, attending continually upon this very thing. Render therefore to all their dues, tribute to whom tribute is due, custom to whom custom, fear to whom fear, honor to whom honor. Let's pray. Lord, I thank you for this time. Lord, I pray that this time will be pleasing to you. I pray that your Holy Spirit will have freedom. Lord, I pray that I will say only the things that you want me to say, and do only the things that you want me to do, Lord. I pray that as we go to your word, Lord, that we'll all be affected, Lord, as I know I've been affected by this lesson. In your name I pray. Amen. I truly have been affected by this. I told my Sunday school class the other day I was going to be teaching on this, and I said this is actually going to be a hard lesson for me to teach. Because for those of you that know me, I am a know-it-all. I know how to do everything, and I am right in every way. And following leadership is not always easy, especially when they're going in a direction I don't think is right. And in studying this, I saw a lot of areas of my life that I thought, man, I really need to address that in my life. In 2002, I moved to this wonderful state, and those of you who are sick of the cold are probably looking at me thinking I'm crazy, but Michigan is a wonderful state. And that year, I moved in with J.D. Howell. We were roommates. We lived over in the 600 block of North Harrison, over by the Covenant building there. The parking lot was right across the street. We had a great time together. We did some crazy things. Pastor J.D. has told about the fireworks before in church that we modified. I taught him how to modify fireworks that didn't fly and make them fly and do all these great things and blow up on people's porches and under their cars and run into things all over the place. And we had a blast doing that. We would go out for midnight runs to Walmart. And for those of you, I look at Travis back here, he was in the youth group, and that was one of the things we did on activities. We'd go do midnight runs to Walmart, but we'd also do it in our own personal life. It's like we'd be sitting around, it's 11:30, what do you want to do? You want to go to Walmart? Okay, let's go to Walmart. That's the only thing that was open. So that's how Baptists go clubbing. They go to Walmart. And so we did stuff like that. Stuff like that. We also shared ownership in a piranha. We had an Amazon gold piranha. Thing was gorgeous. We had a great time with it. Doreen Howell hated it because every time she would come over, she would sit there and stare at this piranha and wait for it to eat the fish, and she would stare at it for about 20 minutes, and she would turn away, and right when she turned away, the piranha would eat the fish, and she would miss it, and she would get so mad at this piranha. We go camping together. We still do. Every year at our Man Up camp. He rides up with me, and and we're pitched tents next to each other, and we've always been, best of friends. And next year, he's going to become the pastor, sole pastor of the church. I have to transition my mind and my heart from being best of friends to being under leadership. And I have to do that right now, too. Pastor JD is in leadership. And it's hard. It's hard because I've always had freedom of speech with him. Anytime I want to go to Pastor JD and say, that graphic, Pastor JD, that is awful. That is terrible. We got to change that. That music that they play, we got to get rid of that CD. Just get rid of that CD out of the auditorium. I can say stuff like that, and he's, okay, yeah, I understand, I don't like it either, And I had that carte blanche with him. I could just go to him and open up and say, this is what I'm thinking. I don't think I'm really able to do that much more because he needs all the support I can get. Back when I was in college, I worked at a golf course, and I worked there for a year as a clerk. And I happened to be a little bit good at math, and so the manager who didn't know math at all but was a very good golfer, would have me come in and do the books. And I pretty much managed the place. I'd run the schedules of the employees, I'd do all their payroll, everything, and I'd take care of the whole golf course. I'd order new supplies. And then one day, our company that owned multiple golf courses decided to build another golf course in the mountains, and they moved our manager out, and they asked him, who do you want to replace you as manager of the golf course? And he said, Andy. And I was kind of shocked. I was 18 years old. Took over as manager of the golf course. The problem was one of my best friends worked with me. So we have an 18-year-old and a 17-year-old working at the same golf shop. One just becomes a manager. And I had to lead him. And he didn't want to be led by his friend. It was a difficult thing. We talk about it now, and we've kind of meshed back together, and he's apologized, and I've apologized for my lack of maturity. And it was a tough time because I've moved into a place of leadership, whereas I was a place of friendship. And some of you look at Pastor JD and you think, I remember when you came in 2002. I remember when you were just, green behind the ears, fresh out of college, had no clue, and I still know more than you. And those thoughts are there. In the Bible, though, God places people into position. This passage that we just read, God put them into position. Sometimes we look at change and think it's stupid. I mean, really? You want to do what? I mean, that's ridiculous. I thought about the Facebook and the social media, and at first I was like, really, social media? You're going to spend all those hours doing that in social media? How big is this going to work? I mean, who really looks at an ad in social media? And then Pastor Dylan did it for our trunk or treat. And my wife and I are standing out there with the bags of candy we had to borrow because we forgot the bags of candy at home. And we're standing there and we're looking at this huge line that goes almost to King Road from the pavilion out there, and we're like, where did all these people come from? And it just boggled my mind, but leadership had a direction that they wanted to go. I didn't quite understand. Sometimes those changes don't make sense. Methods are many, principles are few. Methods sometimes change, principles never do. I think if we keep it in the forefront of our mind through transition and through leadership ahead of us, that as long as principles aren't changing, the stand on the King James Bible, salvation being by blood alone, by blood atonement, and faith. As long as we keep those fundamental principles, the methods can change, and it's okay. We can learn to do things differently. We can learn to do things that don't conflict with the Bible and our core beliefs, but do things a little bit differently. In this passage, the first thing that we're going to look at is, number one, understanding our position. Understanding our position. A lot of times we get confused. We decide what our position is going to be, right? We do this with government. Who is the highest person in our government is our thought. Well, I am because I vote and I pay the taxes. Yeah, you're going to do that in office? Okay, well, I'm kicking you out next term. And we get that thought in our mind that, church is that way. But letter A, we are followers of someone. We are followers of someone. 1 Corinthians 11, be ye followers of me, even as I also am of Christ. Paul said, hey, I'm going to follow Christ, follow me. And God says, hey, I'm going to place a pastor, an assistant pastor, a teacher in your life, follow them as they follow me. And he places those people into leadership, and he says, you are going to be a follower of somebody. God has put somebody up in a place of leadership over you. There is somebody that's going to be in place of leadership over us. We have a rule at 911 that is given to all the officers in the county. Every chief has signed this rule and given it to their officers, that if the chief is not present and we request something of the officer, it's as if it's a request from the chief himself. So if we're dispatching a call and an officer says, I can't do that, I'm on lunch. Negative, you're going to the call. This is high priority. We can force them to go. We have that power. The reason why is because we're enabled by others, and they have to understand their position as an officer is that they have to follow what dispatch says because it comes from the chief. Pastor has been given power and direction from the chief, the ruler of all, the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords. He has given that power to our pastors, and it's a necessity for us to follow them in whatever they do. Letter B, we are to take the position as children. I look around here and I'm not the youngest person here. I'm not the oldest person, but I'm not the youngest person. Thinking as a child is hard for me. My daughter's 3 years old. I can't think like her. Her stuff just does not make sense. Why on earth do you like that? Kids nowadays, they like to do this thing on electronics, on YouTube. They watch other kids play with toys. Or they watch adults play with toys and pretend to be the little characters. Like you don't see the adult on the screen, but their hands are moving the little toys and stuff. Teenagers, they like to watch other kids play video games. Don't you want to play the video game yourself? But they'll sit there and watch hours and hours and hours and hours of kids playing video games. Why? They're living vicariously through this. It just doesn't make sense to me. I can't wrap my mind around it. But God says we are to, in Ephesians 5:1, be ye therefore followers of God as dear children. We got to get into that mindset. Wait a minute. I am not an adult in the hierarchy of God. I am a child. I am a child of God. You are a child of God. We need to approach things as if we are a child placed in a Sunday school class or in a school class or in those areas where we are to obey our leadership. So understanding our position was number one. Number two, understanding leadership's position. Understanding leadership's position. Look at verse 1 again in chapter 13. It says, let every soul be subject unto the higher powers, for there is no power but of God. The powers that be are ordained of God. Letter A, they were placed there by God. We just went over that. They're placed there by God. A lot of times we look at that and we say, well, I didn't vote for them. I was the one person out of all the people who voted for JD to become pastor that did not vote for him. That's the mindset. I didn't vote for him. I didn't vote for Trump. I didn't vote for Obama. And so I don't have to follow them. I don't have to follow that leadership. Or they aren't what I thought they would be. Later on I thought they were going to be this type of person, but they weren't that type of person, so I don't have to follow them. And a lot of times we get those excuses in our head. But God says, I place them into position. It's not your job to remove them from position or to complain about them or do any of that stuff. That's my position. I have a nephew. He was a pastor in Texas, close to Waco. And he was there for 3-4 years. I'm not sure. He was assistant pastor first in Colorado and then moved down there and took over as the head pastor of a church. And through the first 3 years, he door knocked. Got families to come to the church. Led people to the Lord. Things were great. Out of the blue, 2 of the leaders in the church came to him and asked him to resign. Their complaint was that the church didn't grow fast enough. He was a graduate from West Coast Baptist College, grew up at Lancaster Baptist Church. They went from 13 to 4,500 in the matter of 10 years. We should be doing the same. And they asked him to leave. They asked him to resign. And I've always been afraid of something like that. I tell my wife, she comes from a church that seems to be, I don't have proof of this, but seems to be committee ruled. And it scares me because they've gone through pastor after pastor after pastor after pastor. Average 2 years, 3 years, maybe 4. One assistant pastor left and went into the homosexual movement. It was crazy, the stuff that happens there. But I think they created the bed that they were in. I look at that and say, I do not want to put my hand on leadership to remove them. That's God's position. David had that same philosophy. Was Saul a good king? He started out that way. Was he in David's time? No, he had disobeyed God. He was going to see witches. That's a spiritual leader you want. And what did David do? Absolutely nothing. And I wonder, a lot of times reading those passages, why did God remove Saul earlier? Why did it take so long? And I wondered if it was a test on David to see how long he would let leadership be there above him and wait for God and be patient. So they were placed there by God, letter B. They don't always enjoy their position. They don't always enjoy their position. A lot of times we think that leaders are there because they're power hungry and they're getting something from this. They're getting paid more, or something is so great for them to be a leader and all they can claim is their power and this wonderful thing, and that's why they're there, because they just love to be in leadership and they just love to tell people what to do. Just read Psalms. Just read Psalms. There are a bunch of chapters in Psalms that are called imprecatory Psalms. One of my favorite is Psalm 113, and it talks about making their father or their children fatherless and let their houses become dunghills. And David's just going off on these people about, the horrible things that they're doing. David did not like the position he was in sometimes. He had people rile up against him. He had civil war. His own son tried to take the throne from him. It was not an enjoyable position, I don't think. Being king was not for David. It definitely was not for Moses. As much as he did for the people of Israel, and they griped and griped and griped and griped and griped, it was not a fun position. I was union president once. I was union vice president, and then our president retired. And so for 6 months out of the year, I was union president at 911. And I have to tell you, being union president is not all it's cracked up to be. I got a lot of disputes that I had to settle. And it was not enjoyable. It was not a position that I wanted to be. Since then, I have ran for union president 0 times. I've not been in the union since then. I will not be in those positions because there's 0 pay, there's 0 thanks, and there's a lot of grief. And so a lot of times we look at leadership and we think, oh, there must be getting something out of this enjoyable for them to be in leadership, but it's not always the case. Sometimes it's a horrible, horrible thing that they have to go through, and some things that they have to be a part of that they don't want to be a part of. So understanding our position, understanding leadership's position. Number 3, understanding the danger of self-promotion. Understanding the danger of self-promotion. Turn to Numbers 16. Numbers 16. Numbers chapter 16. We're going to read a story about Moses. Numbers 16. Verse number 1, we're going to start off. It says, Now Korah, the son of Izhar, the son of Kohath, the son of Levi, the son of Dathan, and Abiram, the sons of Eliab, and On, the son of Peleth, the son of Reuben, took Ben. Just to make sure you know which Korah it is. And they rose up before Moses with certain of the children of Israel, 250 princes of the assembly, famous in the congregation, men of renown. So it's their pulpit committee. And they gathered themselves together against Moses and against Aaron, and said unto them, Ye take too much upon you, seeing all the congregation are holy, every one of them, and the Lord is among them. Wherefore then lift ye up yourselves above the congregation of the Lord. And when Moses heard it, he fell upon his face, And he spake unto Korah and unto all his company, saying, Even tomorrow the Lord will show you who are his and who is holy, and will cause him to come near unto him. Even him whom he had chosen will he cause to come near unto him. Skip down to verse 28. So they do all these different things, and they get censors, and they're going to decide who is holy among them. Verse 28, and Moses said, Hereby ye shall know that the Lord has sent me to do all these works, for I have not done them of mine own hand. If these men die the common death of all men, or if they be visited after the visitation of all men, then the Lord hath not sent me. But if the Lord make a new thing, and the earth open her mouth, and swallow them up with all that appertain unto them, and they go down quick into the pit, then ye shall understand that these men have provoked the Lord. And it came to pass, as he had made an end of speaking all these words, that the ground clave asunder that was under them. And the earth opened her mouth and swallowed them up, and their houses, and all the men that appertained unto Korah, and all their goods. They and all that appertained to them went down alive into the pit, and the earth closed upon them, and they perished from among the congregation. And all Israel that were round about them fled at the cry of them, for they said, Lest the earth swallow us up also. Letter A, God protects the leader. God protects the leader. Take warning, lest the earth swallow us up also. I see churches, when they get old, a lot of times you get leaders in the church, spiritual leaders, princes of renown, Korahs, that will rise up against leadership, and they'll complain about what leadership is doing. They might not be an overt person that goes up and stands in front of the congregation and talks to them, but they might be in the back rooms of their houses or out at McDonald's with a friend saying, I don't like how the church is doing this. I don't like this. I don't like that. The problem with what Korah did here is it says that he knew better than God. He knew better than God. Moses was placed there by God. Great miracles happen. Moses was the forefront of that. And Moses was put there, and when Korah thought about it, he's like, oh, God must have made a mistake with Moses, because it should have been me. I mean, I should be up there leading the people. And not only did they say that I know better than God, but it also stops the work of God. What was Israel doing right now? Nothing. They weren't moving anywhere. They weren't fighting any enemies. They were stagnant because they had to deal with a problem. They had to deal with a problem in the church. Letter B, God humbles the proud. Turn over to Luke chapter 14. Luke chapter 14. Luke chapter 14. Luke chapter 14, verse 7, and he put forth a parable to those who were bidden when he marked how they chose out the chief rooms, saying unto them, When thou art bidden of any man to a wedding, sit not down in the highest room, lest a more honorable man than thou be bidden of him. And he that bade thee and him come and say to thee, Give this man place, and thou begin with shame to take the lowest room. But when thou art bidden to go and sit down in the lowest room, that when he that bade thee cometh, he may say unto thee, Friend, go up higher. Then shalt thou have worship in the presence of them that sit at meat with thee. For whosoever exalteth himself shall be abased, and he that humbleth himself shall be exalted. Then said he also to him that bade him, When thou makest a dinner or a supper, call not thy friends, nor thy brethren, neither thy kinsmen, nor thy rich neighbors, lest they also bid thee again, and a recompense be made unto thee. And when thou makest a feast, call the poor, the maimed, the lame, the blind, and thou shalt be blessed, for they cannot recompense thee, for thou shalt be recompensed at the resurrection of the just. So God humbles the proud, letter B, God humbles the proud. It puts leadership in an awkward position when we place ourselves in a position we're not supposed to be in. Now they're in an awkward position. If I go to Pastor JD and I say, Pastor JD, I really don't like this year's logo. I think it is awful. I think it's bland. I think it's ridiculous. Now he's in an awkward position. He doesn't want to argue with me. He doesn't want to agree with me if he does agree with me and he just went along with the graphic. He doesn't want to deny that I'm wrong. I mean, there's so many different things that go on here that Pastor JD would be in a horrible position. It puts them in an awkward position, also puts me in an awkward position, because now I've set myself for either being abased or part of a griping scheme. No matter what happens, I'm not in a place I'm supposed to be, and God's going to humble the proud. God does not want somebody that is a know-it-all. He wants somebody that's humble and accepts the leadership. Letter C, God removes the power. God removes the power. Turn over to 1 Samuel. 1 Samuel chapter 13. I know I've got you turning to a lot of places, but we won't be doing that much more. 1 Samuel 13. 1 Samuel 13, verse 8. It says, "And he tarried 7 days according to the set time that Samuel had appointed. But Samuel came not to Gilgal, and the people were scattered from among him, or scattered from him. And Saul said, Bring hither a burnt offering to me and peace offerings. And he offered the burnt offering." Now, the backstory of this was that Saul was not supposed to do an offering. He was supposed to wait for Samuel. And Samuel didn't show up when he expected him to, so he did the offering anyways. And it came to pass that as soon as he had made an end of offering, the burnt offering, behold, Samuel came, and Saul went out to meet him, that he might salute him. And Samuel said, What hast thou done? And Saul said, Because I saw that the people were scattered from me, and that thou camest not within the days appointed, and that the Philistines gathered themselves together at Michmash. Therefore said I, The Philistines will come down now upon me to Gilgal, and I have not made supplication unto the Lord. I forced myself, therefore, and offered the burnt offering. And Samuel said to Saul, Thou hast done foolishly. Thou hast not kept the commandment of the Lord thy God, which he commanded thee. For now would the Lord have established thy kingdom upon Israel forever. But now thy kingdom shall not continue. The Lord hath sought him a man after his own heart, and the Lord hath commanded him to be captain over his people, because thou hast not kept that which the Lord commanded thee. Something that stands out at me. Look at the end of verse 13. It says, For now would the Lord have established thy kingdom upon Israel forever. Think about that. Saul could have been the great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather of Christ. Because the Christ was supposed to come from the line of Judah. And he was supposed to be part kingly. And if the line is established forever as the kingdom through Saul, that means Christ should have come through Saul. But you know what he did? He put himself into a position that he was not supposed to. And that robbed him of being a relative of Christ. Think about that. I'd never noticed that before. And it was given to David, a man after God's own heart, a man that was humble, a man that did not take power, even though he was supposed to have it. Did not usurp authority. He didn't go out and he didn't look for fights. He fled from Saul and tried not to fight him. God removes the power. God stripped it from Saul. Not only that, it endangers those who are following you, because you know what? It created civil war. You ruin those that are underneath you. Every one of you in here, somebody looks up to you. I know somebody looks at you and admires something about you. And if you take something that's not yours and God has to abase you, or God has to work on you in that area, you are harming those that are under you. That ruins the leadership. God removes that power. So that's the understanding the danger of self-promotion. Number 4, understanding the aspects of support. Understanding the aspects of support. Letter A, trusting leadership. That's a hard thing. Is it not, trusting leadership? I mean, when we voted for either Hillary or for Trump, I mean, were we really going to trust them that we were going to be safe with our country? I know right now in England, the big thing is Brexit. You know, all the aftermath of Brexit, our economy is horrible. And, you know, we trusted our leaders, and now we left the European Union, and now our money is crashing. Trusting leadership is not an easy thing. You know why? Because they're imperfect, are they not? Pastor JD is imperfect. Trust me, I know. I live with him. He's imperfect. I'm imperfect. But the only difference is God has placed him into a position of authority over me. When we trust leadership, number 1, we have to trust that leadership has our best interest. We have to trust that leadership has our best interest. He cares that you succeed. He's not looking to swindle you out of your money. He likes money, yes, but he's not here to get money out of you. We have to trust him that he has our best interests in mind. Number two, we have to trust leadership that God has set them up. As I said before, it's not our position to set up or to remove leadership. We aren't customers. We don't pay their salaries. We don't get together and say, you know what, it's not working out, let's get rid of them, try somebody new. That's not our position. We let God remove them. Letter B, it's not our position to attack leadership. When Saul threw the javelin at David, David never picked up the javelin and threw it back. When David had a dagger, he did not attack Saul when Saul was sleeping. One of my favorite characters in the Bible was in that story. And he asked David, hey, why don't I take him for you? I'll pin him to the ground with a spear right now. Just Abishai, just take that spear and just pin him right to the ground while he sleeps. I'll do it for you, David. And David says, no, we're not going to put a hand on leadership. It's God's job, not ours. And God took care of Saul in the end. Letter B. So that was trusting leadership. Letter B, owning leadership. Obeying leadership. I cannot talk right now. Obeying leadership. Number one, when it doesn't make sense. When it doesn't make sense. In Exodus chapter 17, Moses is leading the children of Israel, and they're in war, and he has to hold up his arms for Israel to win. That seems ridiculous, does it not? If I hold up my arms, my team wins. If I hold them down, they lose. I'm a Penguins fan. I know you guys that are Red Wings fan probably hate that fact. I'm sorry, but I grew up a Penguins fan. And I've been watching the playoffs lately, and if I can guarantee a victory every single game by just holding up my arms for a game, 3 periods, I'd be happy to. Sign me up. I'll find somebody to prop up my arms, do something. I will hold up my arms to get that victory. Moses had to get a victory for the children of Israel in battle. And he had her and I believe Aaron hold up his arms during that time. And they had to support his arms. And it seems ridiculous, does it not? Really? You got to hold up an arm? I mean, I could be out there fighting. I could be out there leading something. I could do something great. And they held up his arms. Naaman had leprosy, and he went to Elijah, and he said, heal me of this leprosy. And Elijah said, go dip in the Jordan River 7 times. Naaman's thought was, I got cleaner rivers where I'm from than the Jordan River. It's filthy. Why should I go do that? Didn't make any sense at all. What, dip in a river 7 times to cure leprosy? You know, if how to cure for cancer was go dip in the Saginaw River 7 times, that seems ridiculous, especially now it's freezing cold. But, you know, I mean, if it worked, it worked. And a lot of times it doesn't make sense to us what leadership promotes to us, and we have to obey them anyways. When I was in high school, in 10th grade, it was towards the end of the year, our principal came and asked for a bunch of people to help them move the desks into storage. And it was a day that we had off, and I volunteered with a couple other guys, and he says, well, since you guys volunteered, I'm buying you guys lunch. And so I was all excited, you know, oh, great, we get lunch, teenagers, oh, great lunch, you know. And so I work in the morning, principal never shows up. Work on the afternoon, principal never showed up, never got lunch, didn't even eat breakfast. So I've been carrying these heavy tables and chairs all day long, because our school was pretty good size, and I was carrying them all day long in the heat in a desert. And I got done with it, I got home, I was kind of in a bad mood. That night was graduation, and coincidentally, I volunteered to hand out pamphlets, you know, the little bulletins when people come in for graduation. My parents got all dressed up, and they said, okay, come on, you ready to go to graduation? I'm like, I don't want to go. They're like, no, you got to go. I'm like, why are you guys so interested in graduation? There's nobody there, you know, it just didn't make sense to me. No, I mean, they wanted to push graduation. You got to go to graduation, got to go to graduation. Get on my dress clothes, get in the car, walk out, get to the school. People are walking in, handing out invitations. Went inside the back of the auditorium, and graduation's going on up front. Really didn't know what was going on. I was cutting up with my friends. We had bubble tape. And I don't know if you know what bubble tape is, but there's 3 feet of bubble gum in a bubble tape. I put about 2.5 feet in my mouth and was chewing it. My cheeks were swollen. And all of a sudden, I hear my name from the pulpit. Like, what? And my friends are like, go up there, go up there. I'm like, and everybody's looking at me. I have no clue what's going on. So I get up and I walk. Now, if any of you know who Pastor Chappell is and know anything about him, he hates bubble gum. It's like one of his biggest pet peeves. You do not chew bubble gum in the auditorium. You do not chew bubble gum on campus. If he caught you with bubble gum as a student, you're getting demerits. And it was this horrible thing. He hated bubble gum because it ended up everywhere. And here I had 2 feet of it in my mouth. I'm walking up on stage, and Pastor Chappell, he walks over to me and he hands me an award, and I grab it, and he goes, good job. And I go, roo. And he tilted his head and looked at me and kind of shook his head, walked back, didn't really know what was going on. I walked back. I had no clue what the award is. My friends had to tell me what the award is. I didn't even know it existed in the school. It's for getting good grades and stuff that nobody else got. And I was kind of shocked about it. And I think back about that. My parents, they want me to do something that didn't make sense. And I'm glad I did. I'm glad I went that night. Otherwise, I'd miss out on one of the most prestigious awards I've ever gotten in my life. I missed out on a great story. I missed out on something that was fun with my friends. If I wouldn't have listened to them for something that really didn't make sense. A lot of times leadership gets up and they say stuff and we're going to do something. We're going to go knock doors for open house. We're going to pass out flyers. We're going to do trunk or treat. And we got all these great plans, and sometimes we look at them and we go, that doesn't make any sense. I don't know about that one. That doesn't sound very good. So we have to obey leadership, even though it doesn't make sense. Number 2, we have to obey leadership when it goes against our desires. I'm just here for the show. I'm not here for the battle. I just want to sit in a pew and watch. I want to come on Sunday morning, Sunday night. I'll even give you a Wednesday night here and there. And I'll sit in the pew. Other people, because they could go forward, make decisions. That's fine. I don't have to go forward. I do fine. I'll pray at home. I don't have to be a part of it. What's this Man Up camp coming up? Why are people so excited about this Man Up camp? All these guys going to that. That's ridiculous, really. Go act like Neanderthals in the woods. I mean, really, is it that great? And it goes against our desires. I don't know if I could sit in the woods for 3 days. I mean, that's crazy. There's no bathrooms there? What? What do you guys do for showers? I mean, when do you guys get your massage and your pedicure? I mean, you got to get that done, right? Every 3 days? And we look at leadership, and sometimes they say stuff that doesn't make sense and goes against our desires, but we still have to obey them. Letter C. Promoting leadership. This is the most important part right here. Promoting leadership. Who do we promote leadership? Number 1, to others. To others. I just bought a Massey Ferguson backhoe just recently. My philosophy was I've got to rent a backhoe to do this project, 10 projects I had to do around the house. We got a big wooded property that we live on. And I bought this Massey Ferguson tractor because if I have to rent a tractor 10 times at $300 to $400 a time of rental, then, I mean, that just adds up and I don't get to keep anything for it. If I buy the old tractor, that's like 30 years old, and those things never lose their value after that age, and I run it and I do all my projects, and a year later I sell the tractor for the same price or more than I bought it, hey, it works out great. So I got it and I stuck it in front of my pole barn and it started leaking little fluids here and there, as tractors do. You have all these little lines with fluids and little greasy spots end up on our concrete right in front of our pole barn. And I'm like, we got 10 new spots. We didn't have any oil spots on our concrete before then. I was a little frustrated. So I'm like, okay, well, maybe I'll move it behind my pole barn. Well, this is a few days ago, and we had just gone after that thaw, and the snow had melted, and you guys know where I'm going with this now. I wish I had a picture of it up here. I got this thing stuck in a ravine like this, down in about a foot of mud, was having trouble getting it out. I couldn't even use the front part to lift the front out. I was having lots of trouble with it. It took me a day and a half to finally figure out how to get it out. And I was doing some dangerous stuff that I either would have landed on my pole barn or would have rolled down the ravine with it. And it was really ridiculous. And I thought about that when I was trying to get out of the mud. It is really hard to move stuff out of the mud when things don't want to move. They're stuck in that mud. And I was putting cement under there. I got a fallen tree basically buried in the mud there because I put so many logs in that mud and tried to drive out with it. And I thought, man, this thing is really hard. How am I going to get a 12,000-pound tractor out of the mud? You know, my fear was I'm going to have to rent a crane, lift it up. You know, I mean, the worst case scenario. But you know what? Leadership looks and goes, how am I going to get 12,000 people to follow me when they're stuck in the mud? And it's really hard to get momentum going. And when we support leadership, when we say, okay, I may not totally agree with this plan, the spring program, I'm tired, I might not be like totally towards it, but I'm going to get excited about it. I'm going to try my best. And somebody else does it, and then you start seeing that. Like, oh, I could do that. It's a lot easier to get out of the mud when you have four-wheel drive instead of two-wheel drive. It's a lot easier to get things moving, get momentum going. What does griping accomplish? What does complaining about it accomplish? My wife is forever cold. There's a shirt that I want to buy, and it says, I'm sorry for what I said to you when I was cold. And I saw it the other day, and I thought it was hilarious. She hates the cold. In fact, we went camping once, and she's going to dispute with this with me, but it was in the high 70s. And she was out in a camping chair in a sleeping bag because she was so cold. She has been known to wear long sleeves and also, what do you call them, sweatshirts in 80-degree weather. I have seen it. She is constantly cold. And she gripes about Michigan. She says, when can we move down to warmer climate? I'm like, don't ask me, ask God. Hey, you want to move, don't ask me, ask God. It's not my choice, it's his. And I'm okay with the cold climate. I was dying the other day when I turned 70. I was like, please cool off. And I ask her a lot of times, I'm like, what does griping about the weather accomplish? Where does it get you? It just gets you in a sour mood. And a lot of times we have these great things that leadership comes up with, and we gripe about them, and what does it do? Absolutely nothing. It brings other people down. Since leadership has our best interests, helping them move forward helps us move forward. Helping leadership move forward helps us move forward. If a car is broken down, you can either push to help try to jumpstart it, or you can sit on the car and not go anywhere. Those old days of when we had manual transmissions way back yonder. You could jumpstart a car by pushing it. You can sit there on the car all you want. You can sit here in church all you want and never go anywhere. This church will never grow. We will never see anything exciting. We'll never see new buildings built. We will never see this balcony filled. We'll never see anything great because we don't support leadership. Our future depends on it. So we support leadership to others. We promote leadership to others. Number two, we promote it to our family. We promote it to our family. I'm teaching a parenting series in my Sunday school class to our couples. I said, why would Brisbane obey me if I don't obey God? Why would she obey if I don't obey? She follows my example. And if I don't obey leadership, if I come home and pastor asks me to do something, I'm like, no, that's stupid. I'm not going to do that. And I get home, I'm like, Brisbane, go clean up your toys. No, that's stupid. I'm not going to do that. Well, she just learned it from me. Our families need to see that. Number three, so promoting leadership. We promote it to others, we promote it to family. We also promote it to leadership. To leadership. We promote leadership to leadership. There's an ancient Chinese proverb, he who thinketh he leadeth and hath no followers is going for a walk. And if Pastor J.D. and Pastor Willette are trying to go somewhere with this church, and they have no followers, they have people who just sit in their pews and that's all they come for, then they're just going for a walk. It takes us to move forward, not whoever's standing behind this pulpit. We could have the worst pastor in the world, but if we're good followers, we can move forward. If we do what we're supposed to do, we can move forward. Things do not rise and fall completely on leadership. Sometimes they rise and fall completely on fellowship. What can we do? Support them. Wash their car. Go take their car out. Give it a wash. Give them a treat once in a while. Hey, I've been praying for you. A kind note goes a long way, especially when they're dealing with a big problem that we don't know about. A lot of times we get focused in our own little world. What is going on in the life of Andy? Oh, I got this and this and this. These are my big troubles. I got a tractor stuck. What am I going to do? And they're dealing with somebody saying just lost their family member. You know? And a little note will go a long way with them. Where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. If you put treasure into leadership, your heart will be there. It'll be easier to follow. 1 Timothy 5:17 says, "Let the elders that rule well be counted worthy of double honor, especially they who labor in the word and doctrine." We read Romans 13:7 says, "Honor to whom honor." So that's promoting leadership. Roman numeral number 5, our last Roman numeral, reaping the benefits of support. Reaping the benefits of support. Letter A. Here's the good thing. If we support leadership, letter A, you are rewarded when others are not. You are rewarded when others are not. Question. Who got to enter the promised land? The children of Israel, right? But not the children of Israel before. Not the parents. It was young people. Well, why did the young people get to go? Because they supported leadership. Leadership said, let's go. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to walk into the Jordan River. And it's going to split. They said, okay. They walked in the Jordan River. The water split. They went across. They said something really dumb. Like, we're going to go march around this big walled city 7 days in a row, and then 7 times on the 7th day, and you can't say a word at all. Don't say a word. And then when you get around the 7th time on the 7th day, then we're going to blow trumpets, and we're going to yell, and then the walls are going to come down. That sounds really dumb. It really does. If you don't know the story, that sounds really dumb. But they supported leadership. And sometimes leadership has really dumb things, and they support it. And guess what? They got to go in the promised land. Guess what? They got to go in the land of milk and honey. Guess what? They got to raise their children in peace. Guess what? They got to drive out the inhabitants. Guess what? They had a lot of better farmland than they did before when they were wandering in the wilderness. Guess what? They got to live their lives and build houses. I lived in a motorhome for a few years. My parents were smugglers into Mexico. Sounds crazy, I know, but they smuggled religious materials because it was against the law at that time to bring religious materials into Mexico without paying big fines. So they didn't want anything other than the Catholic Church come in. So my parents had a motorhome that we sold our house, we bought a motorhome, and we had secret compartments in it that we stuffed in Bibles and tracts and stuff like that, and then we put camping gear on top, and we pretend like we're campers, and we went through the Mexican borders. And I have been on my hands and my knees with my hands like this, on my knees with my hands like this, as a 5-year-old outside of a motorhome with federale with AK-47s walking around us and dogs and all that fun stuff. And I'm still a little afraid of Border Patrol to this day. But they smuggled stuff in. I lived in a motorhome. You know, it was great when we got our own place and we didn't have to live in a motorhome anymore. I mean, we could expand. We could spread out. It was great. And the children of Israel that made it into the promised land, they got things that others did not. They were rewarded where others were not because they followed leadership. You know, I have a sister who's second oldest sister. She likes to fight. Always been a fighter. My brother was getting beat up one time, and my sister's younger, smaller, got up, beat up the bully. She is feisty. She still fights to this day. Somebody gets something that she didn't get, oh, she fights verbally. If you do something like spank your child and she doesn't agree with that, oh, she'll let you know. She's a fighter. You know what the problem with that is? She has to live with herself and by herself. She lives on an island off the coast of Vancouver, separated from family. No friendship. She has her dog, her TV shows. Her husband's there. The marriage was on a rocky relationship. She was a fighter. Oftentimes we create the lives we live in. And by complaining about leadership and not moving forward, we're creating the stagnant life that we're living in now. Letter B, supporting leadership supports God. Supporting leadership supports God. Ultimately, if we don't support leadership, we're not supporting God. Ultimately, if we gripe about leadership, we're griping about God. So supporting leadership supports God. Letter C, your future position depends on your current obedience. Your future position depends on your current obedience. Luke 16:10 says, he that is faithful in that which is least is faithful also in much. And he that is unjust in the least is unjust also in much. Your future position, what God gives you, is dependent on how you follow leadership. You follow leadership, God will have others follow you. You follow leadership, God will bless you. Your future depends on your current obedience. Lastly, letter D. Growth means work, but work means growth. If we want growth, we have to work. But hey, the good thing is that when we work, we get growth. Growth is a good thing. It's always a good thing when it comes to church. The things that we could do and the ways we can reach community, it's exponential. It's like what is the theory of synergy? Two horses can pull more than each horse separate. And growth is great to see. People don't want to be a part of a dead church. It always breaks my heart. I'm going down in May to my wife's old church, and it breaks my heart going there. And I'm like, man, I wish I could be here. I wish I can help out this church. And they've got a good pastor, and he just can't get anything going. The people just sit there on Sunday morning. And they stand up, and the crowd's getting smaller and smaller, and they sing their hymns. And it's very... And then the pastor gives the invitation, and no one comes forward. They take the offering. I'm not sure many people give much. It's just lifeless. Beautiful building. Big building. They've got a gym and everything. And they've got 50 people in the auditorium on Sunday morning. And it's sad. Nobody wants to be a part of that. You want to be a part of something where you're leaning forward and saying, oh, we're going to do this, and this is going to happen, and this is going to be great, and then we're going to do this, and everybody's like, yes, this is wonderful. And everybody wants to be a part of something that's growing, something that's alive. They want to be plugged into that. But the problem is, you don't just find that automatically. It just happens in your life and in church. You create it. You create growth. Plants just don't grow. You don't just go have a garden that automatically grows. You have to go plant seeds. You got to pull weeds. You got to cultivate the plant. You got to water it. You got to give it nutrients. You got to prune it when things are bad for it to grow. You have to work at it. If you want a church that grows, you have to work. But the benefit is that when you work, it grows. And good things happen. Common phrase in exercise is no pain, no gain. You want your muscles to grow, you have to apply some pain. And leadership's going to ask us to apply pain, especially coming up into May. That's our push. Open house is coming up, our big day. And they're going to ask us, hey, can you go out and go soul winning? Can you knock on some doors? Can you invite some people? And there it is. There's where leadership moves forward, and the question is, do we move forward? Do we support them? Do we get excited with them? Because if we don't, we live with ourselves after. We live with the person who we become. Or we don't support leadership, and we're stagnant. We just sit in a pew. And we're consumers more than we're cultivators. And that's the most important thing. Make it easy in this transition for Pastor JD. Step up. Get behind him. Push him forward. Acknowledge him as our leader. Listen to what he says. Do what he says. He didn't ask me to teach this. He had no clue what I was teaching. He still has no clue from the title that I gave. But I wanted to push that because I think that it's important in this transition of our church, because right now, in this transition, one of two things can happen. We either go forward or we go backward. And the going forward is not up to Pastor JD and Pastor Willette. It's up to you. So help me support leadership. I will do my best. I am not perfect at it. I'm not going to gripe. Try not to. I'm not perfect. But I really want to help out. I really want to move forward. I really want to see great things happen in our church. And I believe that every one of you want to also. But it takes each and every one of us. You guys have a good week.